Alrighty, guys. So sorry for the delay. Welcome to Wine Wednesday. Hopefully you guys will find me over here in my new stream and we'll be able to chat. Let me go real quick and get this chat up so I can see it. And all right. Okay. So there are people stuck in the other chat. Oh, gosh. I am so sorry. But anyhow, let me really quickly put this up for anyone who would like to join me. And I'll try to remove it as we go. But there is that. Hi, Elisa. If you want to join me, feel free. But tonight, actually, let me adjust this a little bit. Tonight, I have had this thing lately for Chardonnay. And I don't know why, because I've never liked it before. And the most interesting thing to me, personally, is that the really inexpensive Chardonnay, like the Beringer, is really good. I like it. Some of the more expensive types, I don't like as much. So kind of a cool little interesting thing. Next time you get a Chardonnay, try the cheap kind. It might tickle your fancy a little better, but I like it. So tonight, unfortunately, I've sent the incorrect link all over Facebook. So you may have to watch this after the fact, which sucks, but I wanted to talk about tank setup. And hey, Melanie. Melanie says, still driving home from work. Unfortunately, streams are hard for me to come on live because of the time difference. I'll be listening though. No worries, no worries. I mean, if nobody comes in, it's cool. Whatever. I'm really late. Honestly, though, just to let you guys know, I'm working really hard and I have not gotten rid of Nightbot. So delete that stuff. Yes, please. I'm sorry. What? Oh my gosh. Okay, Lisa, I don't know how it did that. I have no idea. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I don't know how to stop him. Remove. There. Okay, cool. All right, I fixed Nightbot. Lisa, I am so sorry that he put you in a timeout or whatever. It won't happen again because he's gone now. I don't know what happened. I'm sorry. So I'm going to quit apologizing and get on with it. Basically, I wanted to talk about tank setup because I see all over, forums in the internet where people are constantly asking how to set up their tank. And there's a lot of different methods. None are really wrong, as long as you make sure that you, he hates me, it's okay. Nightbot is a jerk. Nightbot, yuck. But anyways, there's so many different methods. And so I was really hoping that different people would come in and, talk about the ways that they set up their tanks. But it looks like you guys are stuck with me, just me again. Unless somebody decides to join and, wants to talk about how they set up a tank. And I figured this could be good for Seahorse people or reef people, obviously. Setting up a tank is setting up a tank. I'm not going to get into the, what specifics you need for seahorses and such. I'm just going to basically, I just wanted to talk about, whether people choose to use live rock and why, or whether they choose to pre-cycle media and why, and what's worked best. One of the real questions that I was hoping other people would join me for was whether or not you leave your lights on during your cycle, because I personally have done it both ways and, have some opinions, but I wanted to hear other people's. So I'm kind of rambling, hoping that people are able to get over here. I know there were people waiting on the other stream. I started to say earlier, guys, I literally seriously have been sitting here with Sean for 40 minutes at least, trying to figure out how to get this thing to go. For some reason, I don't know if I did something wrong in setting up the event, or if, excuse me, or if Hangouts was having an issue. I guess I'll know if it ends up being, really choppy. but I had some pretty cool people lined up to come, and I'm disappointed in the fact Soulless Marine is having his own difficulties, technical difficulties. Well, I feel a little better then, because, man, I'm working so hard on being here on time and ready to go so that I can help people. We can help people. We can do, Wine Wednesday. And then, when I actually get here somewhat close to on time, of course, the internet wants to, me. But, so I guess I'll just continue talking. Hopefully somebody will come along that can get in. But setting up an aquarium. Okay, so obviously there's different options. I mentioned a few of them when I started. And of course we've got, a lot of people like to buy live rock and let it sit and let the bacteria grow and let it cycle the tank. And I have some thoughts about that. But other people will use dry rock and put that in and then add either bacteria or fish food or shrimp or anything like that to start the cycle and keep it going. And then other people, like my preference, will keep pre-cycled media. And that's a little bit different than number 4. What number 4 is that you borrow media or sand or whatever, hopefully not water, because water won't cut it. The bacteria is not really in the water. The bacteria is in the media and sand and places like that. But a lot of people advise taking media from an established tank, sticking it in your new tank, and allowing it to spread, basically. And let's see. Lisa says, to start an aquarium from scratch, I like to use a good bacteria and a piece of shrimp. Okay, well, I need more than that, Lisa. You're going to have to tell me what you mean. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just trying to get somebody to come in here. But, yeah. And the next phase of the chit chat was going to be basically how you determine when it's truly cycled good enough and when you're ready to actually start the tank and put fish in, because that's a big question. I see questions all over the internet constantly saying, here, look at my test results. They look good. It's been 6 weeks. Am I ready for fish? And then I'll see a bunch of people respond and say, oh yeah, you're good. Just do a water change. Your nitrates are, high enough and everything's good. Well, there's a couple of problems with that. So before, Lisa said she just used already cycled biomedia. I like pre-cycled, and we'll get back to that in a second. But the problem with, I need to stop saying the problem with letting a tank sit and cycle, even if you use live rock or actually, let's back up. So when you use live rock to cycle a tank, the basic idea that I think a lot of people don't really understand, you don't trust it until it reads zeros and I do the cycle again. Hey, that's smart. I don't think a lot of people understand that what's really happening. What's really happening when you stick live rock into a tank with water and let it cycle. So what's really happening is that you've got 2 different bacteria forming that will convert, however you want to put it. You've got your ammonia bacteria that will convert ammonia into nitrites, and then your nitrite bacteria that will convert into nitrates. And so you have to give those time to establish. The idea behind any kind of bottled bacteria is that you're adding it instantly. There are problems with that too, though. So we'll talk about that too. And I keep skipping around because, I hate just sitting up here and talking to you guys. But anywho, Soulless Marine said, agreed, definitely not as simple as adding live rock. Right. So when I see a lot of newcomers online follow the instructions, add their live rock that they got at their local fish store, and And basically they're instructed to let it sit for, 4 to 6 weeks or something and let it cycle. And as I started to say, what the cycle consists of growing the bacteria to make sure that it can convert all of the ammonia and nitrites from the fish waste, from the food leftovers, from the processes going on in the tank. You have to make sure that you have enough bacteria to convert all of the ammonia and all of the nitrites so quickly that the fish never feel it. And so, the real question that I'm getting to, of course, the real point is, how do you know when you're ready? But let's slow down, and I get ahead of myself sometimes. So with live rock, you add the live rock in the water and you leave it. Really what's going on with live rock, if you think about it, because live rock is shipped barely wet. Sometimes I got something on. I'm sorry. Live rock is shipped barely wet. If you buy it at a local fish store where it's in a tank, or a bin where it's constantly cycling and constantly with other rock and they're feeding it food or bacteria, that's different. What I'm talking about is if you buy live rock, like online or something. If you buy live rock online, hey, Sherry, if you feel like joining, here, I'm going to put this up again. If I get trolls, well, you know what? Whatever. Or one of the admin can delete it or whatever. But if anybody feels like joining, I'm just chit-chatting about cycling a tank. So, as I was saying, what was I saying? So, you add the live rock that's been shipped to you to your tank, and what's really going on is what starts the cycle, what starts the ammonia conversion, what starts growing the bacteria that converts the ammonia is all of the death within the rock. And I'm sorry, there's no better way to put it. It's really, in my opinion, this should be called dead rock. Because sure, there's a little bit of live stuff still on it, but chances are good, unless you're getting it from a bin where they're keeping it cycled constantly, it's not live. The thing, there might still be things in it that are live, but chances are good you've got a lot of dead too. And a problem that people who use live rock run into, a couple problems, would be, of course, hitchhikers, because think about it. If you're hoping that bacteria on the rock is still alive and that it's going to start your cycle and feed both bacteria all the way through the cycle, there's also a darn good chance that it's got other things on the rock. I mean, I'm just saying, if you're setting up a reef where it doesn't make as much of a difference, that's a different story than if you're setting up a Seahorse tank. But you just have to be aware that if you use live rock, there's a good chance you're going to get some sort of hitchhiker. So, I wish somebody would get in here and at least argue with me. Come on, man. All right. So, hitchhikers is one problem that you could run into with live rock. The other is, oh gosh, what was I going to say? Hitchhikers, and of course the fact that you don't really know. Like, you have no way of knowing how much bacteria, unless you're like a genius scientist. You have no way of knowing how much actual bacteria is already in the rock or will feed and grow the bacteria. The other, let's see, because I have this thought that keeps coming and going as I'm talking. Oh, that's it. The other thing is you're adding something with a lot of dead organisms within it, or that will die. Like if you think about it, if you literally went outside and took live rock from the ocean, put it in your tank, chances are good that a lot of the organisms aren't going to like that switch. So they're going to die off. The die off is what starts the cycle and blah, 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 and feeds the cycle as it goes. A-okay. But if there's too much stuff, then what do you think is going to happen? Of course, you're going to get, I shut up Nightbox. I did shut him up. I made him no longer admin, but I don't know how to delete him, to be honest. If y'all can figure it out, do it. Melanie, delete him. But anyhow, So, you know, with a lot of, if you get live rock that has a lot of, that's really dirty, or, you know, you just have no way of knowing what else in that rock, and you could add a lot of organic material, organics, that could, of course, cause lots of nitrates and phosphates. So I've literally seen cases where people will stick live rock in their tank, and 2 to 3 days later, they're talking about, look, I've got, you know, I didn't see a spike of ammonia or nitrite, but my nitrates are 20, so I'm good, right? No, because you've got nitrates because of all the, you know, the organics, maybe not within 2 to 3 days. But my point is, it can get confusing if, you know, you don't really know what you're working with, is I guess my point. And so live rock has been the method used for a really long time. I'm not down in it. I'm not saying that it's, you know, a bad method to use. I'm just talking about the pros and cons. The pros to using live rock, of course, are that, you know, it's easy. Solus Marine says, I think that is a great point that we do not hear mentioned nearly enough. Live rock is a sponge, and if you don't know what is in it, you are putting a time bomb in your tank. Exactly. And this kind of feeds into the secondary question of, do you leave your lights on? You know, or how do you know when it's done? How do you know how much ammonia and nitrite can be converted? This is really important when you're talking about seahorses, because, you know, they need more. They're going to have a higher bio load, meaning they eat and produce waste more, and just the extra food and the extra, etc., will create a higher organic level, a higher level that needs to be converted from ammonia to nitrites, is the best, easiest, hobbyist way to put it. And if you're, you know, a lot of the stuff that's in live rock, as we said, will turn into nitrates or phosphates instead. And if there's too much stuff, even if you have enough bacteria to convert it all the way to nitrates in the time period that you want, if there's too much, then the recommended weekly water changes or biweekly water changes are not going to keep up with the nitrates. And your nitrates will be skyrocketing and your phosphates will be skyrocketing. So Lisa does not leave her light on during the cycle. Hey, KG Tropics. If anybody wants a link, I can give it to them. I'd love for somebody to chit chat with me instead of me just talking to the camera. But I'm just glad you're all here. There's something on my lip. I'm sorry. All right. So I'm going to go on, but what did I want to say? I don't know. I do get distracted awfully easy too. So I wish I had, you know, little whatever. But we were saying that there are problems with live rocks. The pros to live rocks now. The pros to live rocks is that, to using live rock to start a cycle, is that, you know, it, some people say it provides natural bacteria, like the bacteria that, you know, is actually being used in the ocean. Of course, it's all kind of the same, but it's not man-made bacteria, I guess, or not bottled bacteria. So it's maybe better in some way. I don't know. I've never noticed a difference using dry rock. So, you know, I think kind of bacteria is bacteria, but some people think that. So I just thought I'd mention it. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else important to say about live rock. I guess my final thought on live rock is, if you choose to use it based on the old method of cycling, make sure you trust the source that you're getting it from. And if it were me, I would probably put it into like a bucket or something, and either let it sit with like a hob filter on the side or something, just to clear all of the extra organics, because chances are good that that live rock is going to have so much stuff. Yes, I almost said something else. So much stuff in it, good and bad, that it's going to provide what you want as far as starting the cycle, no matter what. So you might as well get some of the yuckies out of it. It's a very simple way to put it. All right. So, you know, using live rock can work. That's fine. But you have a lot of questions at the end of the day as to how much has it worked. The salty reef. Live rock can also introduce unwanted pests like Aptasia and such, which is very bad in a seahorse tank. Just joined in, so not sure if that was mentioned. I did mention it a little bit, but the point is so valid, it needed to be mentioned again. It's a big deal, you know, especially if you're doing a seahorse tank. If you add live rock and it has Aptasia hidden in some crevice, those suckers, now, we talked at the beginning how, you know, when you're counting on the bacteria from live rock to cycle your tank, basically it only works because there's so much dead bacteria and dead organics and death to feed the bacteria. Because that's the point everybody misses. I'm getting to that point, I'm giving myself away early. But my point basically is that people forget that they have to feed the bacteria. So live rock is really good in that it feeds the bacteria. But if you've got bacteria that's alive, chances are good that those stinking Aptasia are alive too. Because those things, I swear to goodness, I don't care. I wish somebody would get in here and argue with me. But I'm telling you, they don't die. Ever. I've literally put rocks with Aptasia into a bucket. Everything short of bleach. I used, I'm going to pronounce it incorrectly, but fenbendazole, panicer. I've used so many things that were supposed to kill Aptasia, hyposalinity, you know, all that stuff. And I'm not saying those things don't work. I'm sure they do. They just didn't for me. I ended up having to bleach and recycle the rock because bleach was the only thing that would kill those suckers. So taking live rock, just to understand that if you're doing a reef, you might want to get something that's going to eat Aptasia. If you're doing a seahorse tank, I'm just going to really honestly say don't use live rock. So let me read what people are saying so far. So KG Tropics, I started my first tank, a 10-gallon saltwater tank with live rock, and had 0 problems. I mean, good. I'm sure. My LFS, local fish store, did have some things I consider pests like bristleworms, but that was it. Yell at me. I hate them. They're a pain in the butt to kill. I'm terrified of seeing any kind of critter. Lisa, you got to get used to the critters, man. I don't like bugs. I have a serious fetish is the wrong word, opposite word. I have a serious, oh my gosh, I always get tongue-tied. I have a serious fear. Fear is an easy word. I have a serious fear of bugs, like so badly that if I go somewhere, I don't let my coat touch other people's coats. I mean, it's really bad. I'm really weird about bugs. But with my tank, I don't know, it's different. At first, I was like, oh my God, what are all those creepy crawly things? Oh my God, what are those things on the glass? What's that thing that looks like a spider? Ah! Phobia. Yeah, that's it. Solus Marine, thank you. I have a phobia. Serious, literal. And I was the same way with my tank at first until I realized, hey, wait a minute. Half of those things are feeding my seahorses. My seahorses like them. And the other half are, you know, once you get a good ID from a place like Milev's Reef on what it is, and once you know what the critters are, they're usually helpful. They're usually not bad. Now, if we're talking seahorses, bristleworms, Aptasia, all those things, no, we don't want them. They're bad, bad, bad. That's why it's kind of hard to do this stream, because if you're talking reef, that's a lot different than a seahorse tank. I have a crap ton of bristleworms in my reef refugium. Not in my seahorse tanks. My seahorse tanks are set up and started differently. Maybe I'll explain that in a minute. Okay, KG Tropics said, we're talking critters for a minute. KG Tropics said, now I'm picking out stomatella. Did I pronounce that correctly? Snails. They breed like rats. Very cool to see the super shiny shell, though. Yeah, I love those snails. Snails are my thing. I really like the snails. Sean, my significant other, even when he had a reef, he found some Chitons. I don't even know how. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it because I'll probably sound like I'm cursing. So he had those snails, and they were so cool, and they ate things that I did not expect them to eat. And so we actually did everything we could to make them reproduce. And now I have them in most of my tanks because they're just so cool and eat things that you know, wouldn't get eaten any other way. And I'd love to have a stream about snails because I love my snails. There's one, you know, there are different types that eat almost anything that's a problem in your tank. And of course, I saw a comment earlier that adding cleanup crew is just a fix, a Band-Aid. You know, it's just, unless you're willing to continue adding cleanup crew to constantly deal with the levels that are causing the problem, the levels of phosphate, the levels of nitrate, the levels of organics that are causing the problem, then, you know, you're just Band-Aiding the issue and not really dealing with it when you need to be dealing with the phosphates and nitrates and organics. But I still love my snails, okay? They're awesome. When I have a situation in a Seahorse tank that is a little more difficult to keep organics under control, and when I'm already doing everything that I can, and it's just literally like an algae growing or whatever, or a matting turf type algae that's growing, man, I find the right snail, it wipes it out, we're good to go. And then I personally, I don't know why my voice is so scratchy. I personally, at that point, once I've Band-Aided the problem with some snails, then I will up my refugium scrubber or sump production, meaning change the lights or add more macroalgae or whatever to get that in the refugium, taking up all those extra nutrients so it doesn't grow back. So, you know, there are ways to make it more of a Band-Aid, more than a Band-Aid. But I got way off topic. We're supposed to be talking about tank cycling. So let me get back to that. But let's look at comments. Gonna invest in some arm-length gloves. Lisa, they sell the gloves. I actually have this weird thing where hydroids, if there are hydroids in a saltwater aquarium in my home, they sting me. I don't care if they're in the rocks. I don't care if they're wherever. If I stick my hand in the water, it feels like I'm being shocked, for real, because I just have skin like that. And, you know, other people can stick their hands in my tank and don't feel it, but I do. So I bought those gloves for that specific reason, and they'll sell them in anywhere that does any kind of fishing supplies. That's where I got mine, is a store that did fishing, you know. Yeah. Okay, I'll tell you later. All right. So, a little wine. And we're drinking Chardonnay tonight. I want to know what y'all's drinking. Even if it's a smoothie. What you drinking tonight? And let's see. So, get tweezers too. I use them to feed eels and pick out critters. Very good. Tweezers are good. And inverts are a very interesting part of the hobby. You know, the salty reef, I have actually done a complete turnaround about that. As I said, when I first started, I was kind of afraid of them. They look creepy. They look like bugs. But now I'm like fascinated when I find a new thing. I'm like, what's this? And, you know, take pictures and tell me what this thing is, because I want to find out what it does. And, you know, they can be cool. They really can be cool. My peppermint shrimp in my Seahorse tank are, I'm not kidding, they're huge. They're huge and they're so cool. I've never seen Aptasia again in that tank. And with peppermint, it's hit or miss. I'm not saying that's always the answer, but yeah, my peppermint shrimp are huge because they get fed well, you know, and they're just really cool. Mine are bright red and just an interesting part of the tank. So agree, inverts are a cool part of the tank. All right, so I'm gonna get back to tank cycling in case anybody watches this for that reason. We do tend to ramble. This is, you know, kind of what I want, except for I hope that people will come in at some point. But, you know, it's Wine Wednesday. It's time to just gather as friends. I'm going to drink my wine. Hopefully you guys will too. But we're just chit-chatting about stuff about the hobby, you know. And sometimes it'll be seahorsey and sometimes it won't. But, okay. So, back to cycling a saltwater tank. We talked about live rock. Now let's talk about dry rock. Dry rock, there's different types of dry rock. A lot, and I'm getting psycho. Oh, if I'm breaking up, tell me. Sorry. Something's going on with Hangouts or my computer or something, because I tried so hard to get on and couldn't. But dry rock is, you know, basically live rock that's been dried out, obviously. But there are different types of dry rock. When I say types, obviously there's different rock from different oceans and different places that can look different. But there's also, like, for instance, we talked about how live rock can have a lot of dead organics in it. So just think, if you took that live rock with dead organics and personally, like, wanted to dry it out yourself and set it out in the sun and let it dry out, well, you just basically, you know, killed anything that was alive, but it's still in the rock. So with dry rock, I've used dry rock many times. It's a great thing, but I think people forget to mention. So I'm just, basically, we're just talking about things that people forget to mention. I'm not, you know, so I think people forget to mention that you should always, always, always spray down your dry rock. Maybe let it soak in a bucket or something, like we talked about live rock, for a few days with a hob filter or some sort of filter that's, you know, taking up anything that gets in there, maybe carbon even. Some people go to higher levels using chemicals to clean their dry rock, because there have been too many examples of, just like live rock, you put dry rock into a tank, you go to cycle it, and then all of a sudden you've got these crazy high nutrients because it was within the rock. And I personally, my reef tank was actually set up with half live, half dry. It was way back when I first started. That reef tank's been going forever. But I set up the tank with half live, half dry. And I have one rock in there that literally years later, no matter what I do, if I let that tank get even a little bit out of whack as far as organics and nutrients, algae grows on that rock every single time. And I've become convinced that what's happened is that rock was so full of crap, organics, whatever, that it's literally releasing phosphate. And so, you know, if there's going to be a, you know, I've figured out ways to deal with it overall, but if there's going to be a problem, it's going to be on that rock. And so you don't want to have that happen. So the best way to deal with that is to clean the dry rock. Clean the dry rock. Make sure that, you know, you've let it sit in water that's not your tank. You know, things like that. There are many different ways to do it. A lot of people use acid. A lot of people will do all sorts of different things. But I'm just going to leave it at clean it. Hopefully I'm still going. I see it keeps freezing. I'm sorry. But anyways, okay. So the third method is, actually I want to talk about we're going to switch them. So the third method is borrowing media from an established tank. Great idea in theory. Great idea overall, really. But make sure you trust the person whose tank you're taking water, or I'm sorry, not water. Water doesn't work. Bacteria is not in water. But make sure that you trust the person and, you know, are very familiar with their tank before you take media from them, because as with all of these things, you get the bad with the good is the bottom line. So, you know, if they have, and there's a lot of times that people say, well, I'm taking this media and there's no way that there could be anything bad on it because, you know, I'd see it. So the Salty Reef says, spray dry rock with a hose, clear the dust out, and then let it dry in the sun. Then you've got clean rock. You can cure the rock and begin your cycle. That's what I've been successful with. Awesome. And I'm curious too, because I think people have confusion about the difference between curing and, you know, what's the other term? Well, curing and cycling, I guess. I think people have a different idea of what that means. And actually, to be completely honest, I would love a correction if I'm wrong, but the way that I think that it works is that curing the rock is literally having it sit in a container. Melanie, peppermint shrimp work for your aptasia? Mine too, but you got to get the right kind. Anyways, curing rock, if I'm recollecting correctly, I haven't had to do rock in so long that, you know. Anyways, curing rock is, I believe, basically putting it in the container and letting it sit and letting all the stuff get, all the yuckies come out, right? I mean, I'd love to hear a better definition than that. That's not very good. Salty Reef, where you at, man? But, you know, that's not cycling. The rock is not cycling. And actually, that's I'm jumping ahead again, but that's getting, my opinion, as long as your container isn't your tank. Right, I'm sorry. Curing rock would be sticking your rock into a separate container that is not your tank and letting it sit with like a power head, or letting it sit for a long time without, basically you're letting the die off happen and in the tank if you're using live rock. Geez, I'm messing up my words. You're letting the die off happen in the bucket versus your tank if it's live rock, and you're letting it clean and etc. if it's dry rock, is my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong. But anyhow, I don't have to deal with any of that because I use pre-cycled media, and I've had my rock forever. But I want to make sure I get it right for anybody who does watch this. So come on, guys. Here's the link if anybody wants it. So far, no trolls have gotten me. Anybody want to join? Say hi, even for 5 seconds. All right. So back to borrowing media from an established tank. My only advice as far as that goes is, number one, make sure that you know the person's tank pretty well. Trust that there's not that much bad stuff, because even if you're talking about a sponge or, really small rocks or media of any kind, it can still carry bad stuff, whether it be bad bacteria, whether it be, even aptasia, there's spores, there's so much stuff that we don't even realize because it's so tiny and microscopic, but it can be transferred. So just make sure that you know and trust where you're taking media from. And the common theme through all of this, and the main point that I'm trying to get to, is that still, again, how do you know when it's cycled and what does it take to actually cycle? So I wanted to cover the basic ideas. The final basic idea is, of course, having pre-cycled media, which means, I've said it a couple times and shown videos, but basically I have both rock and K1 media and Brightwell bricks. I'm sorry, marine pure bricks. I'm so sorry. Marine pure bricks and spheres and all sorts of media in a couple of different brute tubs in which I literally added ammonia, cycled the media, and now I added bacteria, added ammonia, cycled the media. We'll talk about that again in a minute so I can be more clear. And now I just add ammonia or an ammonia source every once in a while to feed the bacteria and keep it alive. And then if I go to use it, I test it, of course, to make sure that it can convert what I need it to convert before I add it to a tank, which is the next thing I'm going to talk about. So the main question that I wanted to get to was, there are all these different ways to cycle a saltwater tank. You can use live rock, dry rock, borrow media from an established tank, or keep pre-cycled media. But the really important part is, how do you know how much it can handle? And most advice will tell you, to just add fish slowly. And that way, the bacteria has time to catch up if there's not enough. Because the way bacteria works, in the simplest form, I'm not science here, I'm just simple. But in the simplest form, the way bacteria works is it will grow based on what it's fed, to put it simply enough, I think. Yeah. you'll have more bacteria when they have more to eat. And eat's a bad word. Everybody jumps me every time I say eat, but it's the easiest way to say it. They don't really eat, guys. They don't really eat. They convert. But the more waste they have to convert, the more ammonia that the ammonia bacteria has to convert, the more nitrite that the nitrite bacteria has to convert, the more they will grow, if that makes sense. So they grow in response to how much there is. So the whole point behind adding fish slowly is that if you don't have enough bacteria to handle the bio load, which is the amount of waste, the amount of extra food, the amount of organics in the system caused by the fish and the normal processes, if you don't have enough and you add a fish, then basically you're hoping that you either have enough or that the bacteria will grow fast enough so that it's not a big deal. So like if you get a 0.25 ammonia, oh well, or whatever. That's kind of the thought process behind adding fish slowly, in my opinion. So come on in and tell me I'm wrong if you'd like, but I'm just kind of rambling again. And I want to know if the link works. So, all right. Anyways, so it grows in response to the amount of organics in the water is the bottom line. So when people, Solus Marine said, I think that is a great way to look at it, as well as the fact that their lifespans are so short, right? I forgot to mention that. And acknowledging the role that it plays in how quickly things can change in a tank. Right, absolutely. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to cover that, but come on in and tell me how it is, buddy. But anyways, perfect points, absolutely. So what I was saying, and I was kind of getting to that, but thank you for keeping me on track there, is basically the bacteria grows in response to the amount of organics in the water. Solus Marine was very correct that they also have a very short lifespan. So they're constantly reproducing. Yeah. They're we'll just say multiply. They're constantly multiplying and dying. So it's this constant, ever-changing thing based on what's in the water. And so I think the point that a lot of people miss when they cycle their tank is that feeding the bacteria has to happen. So like you can't stick rock, live, dead, or otherwise, into a tank and call it a day and have a cycle tank in 6 weeks. You might have some readings, but you're not going to have a cycle tank because you're not feeding the bacteria and it's dying off as quickly as it's multiplying. So it's just that you have to add an ammonia source to the water in order to actually cycle the tank to keep it growing. So anyways, let me think where I was. I was trying to cover what you were saying too, and I kind of got lost. But so quickly. Oh, another thing that I just want to throw out there that kind of got me when I set up a Seahorse tank once is that the bacteria that converts nitrite grows a lot slower, multiplies a lot slower than the ammonia or than the bacteria that converts ammonia. So a lot of times people will try to cycle a tank. They'll get it. They'll see an ammonia reading spike and go down. And then let's say that they see nitrates. They see nitrates and they think their tank is cycled. It's not. You really need to see that nitrite spike. If you're using bottle bacteria, sometimes you don't. But the bottom line is testing is the way to do it. I'm getting to my point, guys. I'm just going to make my point. How's that? All right. So the easiest way to make sure that your tank is cycled and ready for fish is, yes, of course, test. I've got my little, for cycling, I use the very simple API test kits because you don't need exacts. You just need, I don't need exacts. I'll just leave it there. So, I use the API test kit to test ammonia and nitrite as my cycle goes. If I'm using bottled bacteria, which I do often, I will add the media add the bacteria, add the ammonia source, wait a day, then test. And keep testing as it cycles. But the main point is, say for my pre-cycled media, I let it sit there. I add an ammonia source every now and then so that the bacteria keeps growing. But how do I really know that I have enough bacteria when I go to start a tank with it? The easiest way is by using the ammonia test. Basically, in my bucket of pre-cycled media that has rock, media, etc. sitting there in water that's been cycled, but I haven't been, there's no fish providing waste. There's nothing providing any extra ammonia source other than what I'm adding now and then. So what I'll do is right before I use that media to start a tank, I will add 2 ppm. I will add ammonia with an ammonia test and do an ammonia test. Make sure that that ammonia is equal to 2 ppm. That's for seahorses. You can go a lot lower for, a reef tank or something like that. I just like to be careful. I like to make sure that if I add seahorses, they're not going to have any problems. I have to make sure it's cycled. So I go for the highest amount that I can get. I add ammonia until the test reads 2 ppm. I test again in 24 hours. If within 24 hours, I do not get a I do not get an ammonia test that results in 0 and a nitrite test that results in 0, then it's not cycled enough. That's the easiest way to know that it cannot handle that. Because as I was kind of sort of saying earlier, I've had a couple instances where I've started a tank, thought that the media was already cycled. It was pre-cycled media. I started the tank, and then lo and behold, a week later, something's wrong. Those seahorses are acting funny. What the heck? And I had nitrites. I was not aware at that time that nitrites grew slower. I was not aware at the time of a lot of things. But the bottom line is I learned from it, and I'm trying to share that. So the bottom line is make sure that the media that you're about to use is cycled to the point where it can handle the bioload of the fish that you're about to put in. So if you're just adding one fish, maybe you don't have to, worry as much about that. But if you're talking about seahorses, the easiest way is to test. And my phone is going crazy. I don't know why. Let's see. Oh, no. Melanie, no worries. No worries. Anyways, salty reef. Curing rock is basically sitting in a tub of water, doing water changes to remove the dial. See, I knew I was forgetting a part. Dag on it. Thank you very much. So when you're curing rock, you're, of course, trying to remove the organics that are within the rock. So that's the part that I missed and forgot to mention. It's been a long time. Sorry, guys. But, yeah, you do water changes every now and then after you've let it sit forever just to make sure that you're removing anything because, it'll leach out into the water. You do a water change, you're removing those organics. Then you've got rock that is clear of any kind of, extra nitrate, phosphate, organic type stuff. So, and when I was talking earlier about leaving a light on during a cycle, that's when it matters the most. Because, anywhere you put a light, you're in anywhere that you put on a light and you have any kind of organics. So even if it's just you've got plants in the refugium, don't even have fish yet, or you have, rock that no matter how clean it is, there's something, or you have fish. You turn a light on, algae is going to grow if you have not provided the means of nutrient export that are required. But, we'll talk about that another time because I know I've rambled on. And I get, when I have people up here talking with me, I just get more comfortable and I don't get all tongue twisted and I don't forget stuff. So apologies. I'll get better. But so you have all these different methods of cycling a saltwater tank you have all these different options when you cycle a saltwater tank as far as rock, dry rock, cycled media. You borrow established media. But the biggest point is that you have to make sure that the tank is truly cycled before you add fish, or you're going to be playing a guessing game. You're going to have to do water changes at a moment's notice because all of a sudden you'll have ammonia or all of a sudden you'll have nitrates. So my way of doing things, which is not always best, but my way of doing things is to have pre-cycled media in a tub. And when I get ready to use that media or rock or whatever, I just do my little ammonia test. Again, add ammonia till the test reads 2 ppm of ammonia. Wait 24 hours. Hey, Solus Marine. Hi. Come on in. Wait 24 hours and then, wait 24 hours and then test again. And if I've got all zeros, well, I usually test again after another day. I like to be sure. But if you have all zeros, then you know that the bacteria in your cycling bin, in your media, it has the necessary bacteria to convert ammonia nitrites to 0 within 24 hours. That's the goal. Solus Marine, if you have anything, feel free. And I hope I'm saying your name right, but I know I stumble over my words. I'm working on that because I want to help, and I know it gets boring just listening to me ramble on and on and on. And I used to do this for a living. This is totally not at all saltwater related, but I just want to tell you guys. So I used to do this for a living. My job was to go. I worked for an advertising firm, and my job, they flew me all over the world so that I would go lately. Solus Marine, you're in. You should be in, buddy. Try talking.
All right. Can you hear me at all?
I can. Hi. Thank you so much for coming in. Let me tell my story real quick, and then you can say whatever you want. Anyway, so I worked for an advertising firm, and I went all over the world. I mean, they flew me everywhere so that I would go in, and it was kind of lame. I was actually in promotional products, but I would go to these large-scale companies and basically sell myself, and a lot of them would be interested in the lowest price, and so I would have to overcome that obstacle and really sell myself and my company and convince them to let us do all their promotional products. And I was like awesome at it. So I don't know what the heck happened to me. I don't know where all this tongue-tied stuff got. Honestly, I think it's because I care so much about what you saltwater people think. That's what I'm thinking. But Solus Marine, welcome. Tell me how you cycle a tank. Tell me any thoughts you have about cycling a tank.
Well, you know, as you guys were mentioning, there is a ton of hitchhikers and things like that. And, you know, as we all went over the fact that rock is basically a sponge and you don't know what's in it or anything like that. Sorry, trying to get situated over here. I honestly like to start with rock that's completely just boiled or, you know, acid, whatever your preferred method is. Mm-hmm. And then just to cure it after that. I find that takes care of anything that's on it or in it, you know, cleans it up really well. And that way you can kind of turn it into what you want it to be, you know?
Just for the sake of anyone new watching, I do have to mention no boiling. No boiling rock. Don't boil rock. If you're experienced, I'm not saying you're wrong. But
I'd like to, but for sure.
For a new hobbyist, don't boil rock. Please don't boil rock. There's too many things that can go wrong if you don't know what you're doing.
Oh, so, are you talking about like mechanically and issues like that in your house?
Do what?
What do you mean by what can go wrong? I'm just curious.
No, what do you mean? Because maybe I misunderstood. You said. I
mean, like
acid washing. Do you understand?
Yeah, acid washing, or you know, I like to boil rock personally, but I mean, you said that not to do that, so I'm just curious. You know, your input on that.
Well, honestly, I've never done it. To be completely honest, I just know that most people say not to because it's dangerous because of the fumes and because.
Oh, yes. Yeah, to elaborate on that, yeah, I use like basically what people use to fry turkeys. and do it outside. Because yes, I have done it inside and it's horrendous. The ceiling of your kitchen will turn green. It's bad. That is true.
Yes, and KG Tropics mentioned that there's been a lot of problems with paletoxin, being released by boiling, especially recently. So thanks for clarifying. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that nobody heard what I heard, so when you go to set up a tank, do you typically, you said you basically make sure that you have really clean dry rock, right?
Yeah, I like to start with really clean dry rock and then, cycle it in a vat or, have that available. Or, as long as the rock is clean, you can, start it in the tank. It's obviously a much longer process like you were describing.
Mm-hmm. And what method, I won't say method, what do you typically use? Because the reason that I was honestly afraid to get up here and do this particular stream, a bottle bacteria kind of girl, and I always make sure that it's worked because sometimes it doesn't. And I always have backup plans. So I didn't want to get up here and say that that was a good method. But I just always worry because when people use flake food and shrimp, first of all, that's adding, extra organics. And
absolutely.
And with the bacteria method, I basically add bacteria and ammonia, straight. But it's also, just the fact that they don't, how much shrimp do you add? How much?
Quantify what you're putting in the tank. It's just, throw a piece of shrimp in there or whatnot. And it's like, yeah, that hardly seems scientific.
Right. So, do you typically use bacteria or what do you do?
I've been using Fritz, the Fritz Zyme a lot lately, had some success with that.
I actually got my first bottle of Fritz at Magna. Well, actually, she sent it to me afterwards, but I met Jessica and with Fritz, and they are just awesome people in general.
Okay.
And then look at you. You look all professional and I look all silly. Look at that. All right. Sorry. I'll get it off of you, but I just want to show. Nice. I had my headset out and it went terrible. I'll be quiet now. Go ahead. Were you just laughing at me? Sorry. Uh-oh.
You're what you're saying.
I think it's breaking up. Dang it. Okay.
I can turn the camera off and see if that'll help.
No. It's not you. It's not you. It's I spent 40 minutes trying to get this thing to work because it kept spinning. I have a brand new computer. I don't know. But I'll work on it for next week still. Please don't go away. It's okay. If it fails, it fails. But all I was saying is that I got to meet Jessica that's with Fritz at Magna, and they gave me we taught. I used some of their different products, and they definitely work. So I'm glad you mentioned them. I've also used Dr. Tim's and things like that. So, so what kind of schedule do you go on when you're cycling a tank? Any? And I think I did lose you. God dang it.
Do you mean as far as?
I know. I think it's breaking up. I'm sorry. If you hear this and can respond, yes, I meant as far as how long do you wait before you even start looking at what the tank's doing?
I think the most important thing is constant to know, like, in one situation with like different rock and stuff like that, or
Sean, is it breaking up on the stream? This sucks. This really sucks. I finally get a conversation going.
Definitely.
Hang on. You know what? Seriously, because I think this is a really seriously problem on my end. So let me try to turn my camera off.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So It is frozen. Damn it.
Yeah, it's not frozen.